Project Exploration presents 15 for 15, celebrating 15 extraordinary years with 15 extraordinary people who make it all happen.
Hi, my name is Natasha Smith-Walker, and I'm the Executive Director of Project Exploration. This year, Project Exploration is celebrating its 15th anniversary with a series of special events and our 15 for 15 video series. 15 for 15 has introduced us to some of the diverse people that have made Project Exploration the unique, influential, fun organization it is. This includes our scientists, our parents, our teachers, our staff, and our amazing students. Our final 15 for 15 video, we are speaking to the person who's been there from the very beginning, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. Gabe founded PE in 1999 and led the organization through an incredible amount of change and growth. As any young person who has worked with her knows, her passion for education, her commitment to social justice are matched by her joy of working side by side with them to discover something new. Like so many in the PE family, I feel honored to have worked with her and call her a friend.
Project Exploration was really birthed out of a series of experiences during which I was working with kids on the south side of Chicago at Fisk Elementary School and other schools, and really becoming more and more aware that kids who really live in the city have very little opportunity to have adventures, and really to have adventures through school. The second thing is that I myself was going on expeditions to Africa and other parts of the world that really exposed me to the wonders of science and the idea that a question can be a kind of quest. And the last thing is that I was working heavily in the small schools movement here in Chicago, which was really asking questions about education reform. And one of the things that happened was I started to look around and say, well, whose job is it to make sure that kids have an opportunity to have adventures, to do real science, to meet scientists? And that's when I started to realize if it's nobody's job, maybe there's an opportunity for an organization, and it could be that organization's job. From the very first program I started with Project Exploration, Sisters for Science, there was the idea that nothing would be a one-shot deal, that we weren't going to see any kids just once. And I think it was really at the showcase of knowledge for the first Sisters for Science, where the young women, they were in 7th and 8th grade, 6th grade, were talking about how far they had come, the personal development they had had while doing really fun, interesting things alongside scientists, that I really started to understand how powerful a space we were creating for leadership development and learning. And that was a transforming experience for me, that first showcase of knowledge for Sisters for Science. I think one of the very early hurdles for me leading Project Exploration that didn't go away actually was the pressure to grow, was the pressure to serve more, was the pressure to think about ourselves, a place that was very relationship based, in the context of a museum that maybe sees 20, 30, 100,000 kids a year. And that tension was a very early hurdle, and it was a very challenging one to think about, should we be serving more and more and more kids, or should we try to figure out how we serve the kids we have more deeply? And that was a real important challenge, and I think we came out the other end deciding that we wanted to invest more deeply over a longer period of time. One of the benefits that I had because I was at the helm for so many years was we were actually able to check in on the data. What is the impact of that strategy? What is the impact of working with smaller groups of kids in a very close way over many years? And we learned something profound, which is we are more likely to have more kids pursue science in college and as a career with that strategy than any of the organizations serving tens or hundreds of thousands of kids a year. So it was a very early hurdle. It's a hurdle that I think hasn't gone away for the organization, but I think we were vindicated by paying a lot of attention to our impact. In the United States of America, the question of the role of science in education is really shaped by the idea that science is at the frontiers of knowledge. It's an idea. But more importantly, in the United States, that idea that science helps create the frontiers of knowledge is very much tied to our competitiveness. How do we be the strongest economic power? How do we have the most innovation? And that ties back to ideas about what happens in science and technology and engineering and math. Since the 1950s, who science has been for is very simply put students who are the best at school, the quote-unquote brightest minds. And by default, because our education system is structured the way it is, for the most part, science has been for the academic elite, people who are in the top 10%, who often are white and often are male. Project Exploration had the opportunity to shift that perception entirely, to say that science should be for everyone. It opens up doors for kids that you'd least likely expect to be interested in science, and fundamentally, at the end of the day, science needs to be representative of America. That means minorities, it means women, girls, but it also means new immigrants, it means students for whom English isn't their first language, and it definitely needs to mean kids who struggle in school academically. One of the biggest surprises about Project Exploration is the students will hold you accountable. I remember very clearly we were checking in with students at our 5th year anniversary. We were trying to understand who had we served, what happened to them, what was important experiences for them. And the number one thing students told us that was important to them about Project Exploration, somebody knew their name. Well, that's a very powerful statement. What happens if the goal of your program design is to make sure that somebody knows every kid's name? The young people who've been involved with Project Exploration stay in touch with us, come back to us, let us know when we're not doing a good job, and most of all, have the highest aspirations for us. They are the ones that most believe that Project Exploration can transform lives. I remember and still know so many individual students that have been through the doors of Project Exploration, all of whom have had lives of adventure and challenge and possibility that I never could have imagined when I met them when they were 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders. I remember a young woman named Kendra who was in our very, very first Sisters for Science, who not only helped take care of her sister's child while putting herself through school, was getting her nursing degree while also holding down 2 jobs. I know of a young woman, Elena, who I met as a freshman in high school, at Curie High School. Not only did she graduate Chicago Public Schools and get a free ride at the University of Chicago, she went on to get her doctorate as a young woman who then wants to come back and be a teacher. Marco Mendez, again, very early years of Project Exploration, who just by chance was the alternate for our very first middle school program. I literally interviewed him for a job yesterday. These are students who have every version of what we would call, quote unquote, success. I think the most important thing is that every single one of them, we know their name. Project Exploration is celebrating its 15th anniversary. I don't think when we opened our doors, we ever could have imagined we'd get an award from President Barack Obama. I don't think we ever would have imagined that the President's Council on Science and Technology advisors would name Project Exploration as one of just a handful of models leveling the playing field in science. We never could have imagined that. I don't think we also could have imagined that a city like Chicago would commit to out-of-school time programs being available for all kids. What would happen 15 years from now? I would love to see it be a given that there are as many young women involved in science as there are boys. I would love to see students who struggle academically get the best opportunities in science. But most of all, I think what I would love to see is project exploration operating in a space in which we're not making a division between in-school and out-of-school time, or who science is for and who doesn't need science. What we're really saying is those adventures that science can provide are critical for access, justice, equity, and it's a given that any young person on the south side of Chicago might go on an expedition to Yellowstone alongside a scientist as part of their normal academic lives. I've learned so much from being part of project exploration. I think professionally, I've learned a lot about what it takes to build and grow an organization and support stakeholders and involve lots of different communities. But I think personally, the most important thing I've learned from project exploration is the value of relationships to learning. I mean, education is based in relationships. And if you believe that, if you think about that all the time, you're constantly asking yourself, what is my role? What is my responsibility? But you're also aware that it's not just about the change in the young person you're working with, you're changing. And that's such a privilege. And I think that's been one of the most extraordinary parts of my experience with project exploration.